Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Warren from Pattern Journal, and we are doing something very different today. Now, as you guys know, I've done a few book reviews on the show, and I've done a few TV show reviews. I've covered some of my stuff that I've been excited about from World of Warcraft, something from Warhammer. But today I want to take a step back and go into a bit of a different lane. And this is my going to be my thoughts on the recently released memoir by Britney Spears called "The Woman in Me." Now, as you can see from some of my past work, and to those of you who are familiar with my early review work in the 2010s, especially with the Founding Fields and on my own blog, you know I've never done a memoir review or really said anything about memoirs. Uh, I own stuff about Steve Jobs and Stephen Hawking, and I have ebooks for a whole lot more memoirs, which is just like me being kind of a collection OCD thing. But I've never really read any of them. I wanted to, like with Steve Jobs, because so many people are like, "Oh, this is so fantastic! You have to read this," or a bunch of others. But I've never been specifically motivated on a personal level to go read one of those. And that changed with Britney Spears' The Woman in Me, which was released like a few weeks ago, almost a month now, I believe. And I think one of the reasons for that, why I felt that deep connection and that urge to read the book, was because in many ways, I identify a lot with Britney Spears as an artist and as a person because, like, I'll be honest, when Hit Me Be One More Time, the when her debut album was released, I was only 12 years old. I had no concept of who Britney Spears is. But of course, MTV was kind of taking off seriously in India at that time, and I used to watch it on and off, and I became familiar with Michael Jackson and a whole bunch of other big name artists at the time. But it wasn't until like 2001 when I moved to Dubai and I got a whole bunch of songs from a cousin, and one of the albums in that collection was Britney Spears' second album, Oops, I Did It Again. And it was something quite special for me because I wasn't one to go out and buy music at that time. I would just, whenever I was coming back to Delhi, I would just get a bunch of music, mostly Bollywood music or Indian pop music from the aforementioned cousin. So I listened to a very specific set of songs a lot over and over and over again. And like I said, one of the albums was her second album with Oops, I Did It Again. And for almost a whole year, I was listening to that album and a bunch of like old 80s pop music, which was very weird now that I look back on it all these years later. But that instilled in me an interest and love for Britney's music. I eventually went on one of my trips to Delhi. I went and bought Baby One More Time on cassette, which I'm sure I still have somewhere, but I'll have to look for it. It's probably somewhere in storage in one of the many boxes I have. But it is one of my most prized possessions because I grew to love Britney Spears as an artist, and her songs just have been like the most catchy of all songs I've heard from that generation of artists specifically, but even in general for my taste in English music or American music, however you want to define it. And so a lot of that was playing in my mind when I saw that this book was out. And then I was just thinking back, like, oh, this is going to be a memoir, and it's probably going to touch a lot on her problematic times in the late 2000s and the early 2010s, because especially like when I was in college, and I found out about some of her new music that was out, like with the Blackout album and more, Give Me More, and everything. It was like, wow, this is not the Britney that I remember, because I did listen to a lot of music going into college and then the first couple of years, but that was a time when I wasn't really listening to a lot of music, but I did get all the music I could, whether on CDs or tape cassettes or whatever, what have you, or even listening to online. Yahoo Music, I think, was a big deal back then, and you could watch the videos, the music videos on their channels for many of the artists, and that was like, wow, so many of these music videos I've just never seen, and that was like a huge growth period for me. Listened to a lot of Christina Aguilera and Shania Twain. Shania Twain is another artist I absolutely love, and just like huge leap for me in terms of taste in music. So, anyways, coming back to this book, um, I did have some things that I wanted to see here, but I wasn't exactly prepared for everything that is in the book because she goes into a lot of detail about her early years, her problematic relationships, whether it's with her own family, her father, her mother, her sister, or any of the relationships she's had romantically, um, her marriages, her flings, and especially, like I said earlier, the conservatorship that took out a huge chunk of her life and it drained her emotionally, financially, and just everything. And I'm not going to go into many, or not many, even many. I'm not going to go into much detail because what I want you to take away from what I say is that this is a book that you really should read. It's not a glorification, and it's not a book that's written out of ego. That's how it seems to me. And, it's a very plainly written book. And it's a lot of times it feels like, it's stream of conscious thought. And that makes it come across as a very honest book. It con like and it's like, it really hits hard because she's not it at no point during my read, and I finished this book in one sitting, swear to God. And I was utterly captured by what I was reading because, as I said, she's one of my absolute favorite artists from the last 22 years, 23 years, and this gave me an insight into her as a person, her as an artist, and I'm quite thankful that I have read this because, again, that different perspective you get on the person is extremely valuable when reading a memoir, going by secondhand experiences I've had with other people who read memoirs, specifically people who have read a lot of memoirs, like some people I know in the book blogging community and some old friends I have. And this is like what stuck, what really struck out most for me was that beyond all the glitz, all the glamour, and this is very typical. A lot of times, whether it's actors or singers or politicians or what have you, they have these amazing lives that you see in the tabloids and media, but a lot of times, behind all of that, it's something very plain, something even very relatable, because a lot of them come from such humble beginnings, and it's all about getting that one important shot, and they get it, they smash it out, and then it's just like a meteoric rise. And certainly you can say that for Britney Spears, who's often been called the Princess of Pop, and it's something she references in the book as well. And it's like I like reading this, and like I said, I read this in one sitting. It's not a big book. I've certainly read a lot of sci-fi novels that are like three times as long, whatever. So that's not relevant to any degree. But what is relevant is that I wanted to keep reading. If at any point I was like, maybe I should take a break from this or whatever, then I was like, no, I want to read what's gonna happen. And it's like, when she talks about her early days while doing the circuit with her mom, trying to get into shows and get into contests, and then she gets in eventually, after some tries, she gets into the Mickey Mouse Club, and then you see a lot of familiar names come up, like Christina Aguilera, Justin Timberlake, Ryan Gosling, and so many others. And it's like, and then it starts to inform a lot about what you may or may not have known about these people. Like I certainly like I knew that Britney spent some time on Mickey Mouse Club in the same era, you could say, as Christina Aguilera, and like that stuff. But what I didn't know was that she also interacted with people like Justin Timberlake, with Ryan Gosling, and a whole bunch of others. And there's so many name drops that come along. It's like, oh wow, that's super interesting. And then she's talking about her debut album, and then going on tours. And from everything that I read in the book, tours are hell. Like I have no idea really about what goes on into um, making a tour succeed. But what I did find out, from this book was that it is hell on the artist, and not just because it's a lot. You have to do a lot of shows or whatever, but it's all those practices and all that pressure that's on you to make it successful, and especially when later on in her life and she's doing her Las Vegas residency, about how much creative control she gets, especially during the days of the conservatorship. It sorry, struggling a little to put into words what my thoughts are, but it's like a lot of what's special in this book, and not just from a reader's interest, but more as just reading about this person that you admire, this person that you love, and it's that all the trials that they go through. And Brittany does not pull any punches anywhere, I don't think, because she's had a lot of ups and downs, some really startling revelations about some of her relationships, which, if you go onto social media, you're just gonna, or tabloids, you're just gonna find so much of it out there already. But that's not the stuff that I want to cover because while very critical to her journey as a person, as an artist, and as even as a parent and a wife, you know, and how much of an impact it had on her for the rest of her life. That kind of stuff is not what is my main takeaway this book. The main takeaway is that you need to have a very strong core of people around you who believe in you, who support you, and when you need it, you are able to go and get some time for yourself and to heal mentally, to heal physically, and get all that kind of support from the people around you. Because if you don't get that, if you're constrained by your family, your friends, your relationships, constrained in any way, that prevents you from getting that healing. And when you're out in the eyes of the media all the time and you're hounded by paparazzis, and it's all that pressure building up, building up, building up, and then eventually you explode. So a lot of the core themes of the book revolve around getting therapy. And it's not something that she out and out just lays it out on the page, but it's there, it's between the lines a lot. And all the forced rehabilitations she had to do during the conservatorship especially, and most importantly, most critically, towards the end of the conservatorship when she was pretty much thrown into a rehab center, and she was just like on a complete downward spiral. And that is when people were rising up about where's Britney, what's happening to her, and you know and she has no idea because she's completely cut off from her fans, she's completely cut off from social media, and she's being kept in the dark about everything. She's being kept away from her kids. She's being kept away from all the things that are important to her. And it really hits home, just how isolated celebrities can get. And overall, it's like, and I posted this on social media even. It's like my the book ends pretty much with Britney being free of the conservatorship, and she thanks her fans, and that was a point where I felt myself getting very emotional because, like I said, she's been a favorite artist of mine for a long time, almost for most of her career, and while I've not kept up with her music as much as I would have wanted to, she's always been a top three artist pretty much for me. And when the whole Free Britney movement was happening all over the US, even the globe, and the conservatorship was, just about to blow up, and it was like I felt emotional reading her thanks for the fans because I was like, I helped put out some of that energy, and it actually did help her in some way, and I felt thankful for that, and even more thankful that she took the time to thank her fans, and that is something I feel that a lot of the really great people, celebrities, media people, whatever term you want to use, when they thank the people that have helped make who they are, especially after such a traumatic extended experience, you know, it feels good to be a fan. It feels good to essentially, even be on the right side of history, as it turns out. And, it's something very personal. It's something very like it's about forming that bond. It's like you not even that, you've been rewarded. That's the wrong word for it. That's not what this is about. It's like like I said, I helped put out some of that energy. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people did that. And it's because ultimately our voices were so loud in media, in paper, in on socials, on the internet, everywhere. Free Britney, free Britney. It was something. It was a historic, special moment, and I'm glad that I was part of it. And I'm glad that whatever energy that I put out, however small that might be, whatever minuscule percentage that is, it did contribute to making someone's life better. And ultimately, I think that's the relationship that we have with celebrities on a personal level. Like they give us something to feel good about, whether it's through the music or through their acting or you know their comics, their artwork, their movies, anything, all that kind of artistic endeavors. They give us something to love, and then we are able to send our love back, not just in appreciation, but also in helping heal them of something traumatic. And of course, all the trauma that she suffered, whether it's been on a professional level or it's been on a personal level with her family, with her past relationships, and with her children now, everything that she's been through, we are still, like I said, we are helping heal someone and we are giving back in a way that matters much more than just numbers going up on a sales chart. And ultimately, that's the special thing. And, it's, I thought it was a pretty powerful narrative in the book. And of course, calling it a narrative does it a disservice because this is not fiction. This is someone's life. She's telling us in very plain terms about some of the horror that she experienced, and just reading about it just makes you feel angry. It makes you emotional about like how can people do this to other people. But then you look at what's going on in the world right now with everything, and it's just like this is a small subset of the daily horrors that people experience. And wherever we can, we should always be trying to help other people instead of putting them down. And you know it makes me feel good that an artist, a singer I've always admired for almost my entire adult life, and even as a kid, that that now, after everything, with all the accomplishments she's had, with everything she's been through over the last 10 years, now she's in such a great place. And hopefully she's gonna make some more music. Like, she has 9 studio albums to her name, with multiple other remixes and best of and greatest hits collections and whatnot. And she has had some of the biggest songs ever in 20 25 years, um, whatever the time frame is. And hopefully she's gonna come back to making more music. She seems like such a completely alive person these days on Instagram. And it's like this book, this memoir has helped me appreciate the artist and the person behind the artist so much more. And it's given me reasons to go out and read some more memoirs, some more biographies about people that I've admired, um, people that I looked up to in some way over the years. And I think that's where I'll end this video. That with my recommendation, that if you get the chance, you make sure that you read this book. And even more than that, you make the time. You can read it in an evening. Um, go into it with, go into it objectively. Forget everything that you've heard about or seen on social media or in the tabloids or in newspapers, whatever. Just forget everything that you know about the quote unquote the bad stuff. Just read this book, listen, read her words, and just take in her own thoughts on what she's gone through, because she is such a strong person. And you read the book and it's like she she knows she's strong as a person. She's, like I said, she's seen so much even as a young kid before any of her success with music, and of course so much of her adult life. But just see what she's telling you, experience it with her own thoughts, with her own words, and make your own conclusions. And definitely, if there's any memoir you read in your life, this one should definitely be one. And then you can read whatever you want. But I would say that this is a book that has changed some of my perspective on Britney as a person, and it makes me appreciate and love her as an artist even more. And I think that this is going to be a historic moment for her. And it's basically, she's letting the door open on her life fully. And everything that you read here, all the trials and tribulations, it's like if we had any real inkling of the stuff behind the scenes, and we as fans and we as consumers, I would say, even if we knew some of this bad stuff that was happening, maybe we could be, as a collective, we would have been much more accepting of her and what she went through. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm really struggling here to, be coherent But anyway, so that's where I'll end the video. I've already taken up a lot of time, but suffice to say, I thought this was a pretty amazing read, and I recommend it to all my friends. And certainly, you know, it's gonna change your mind about her as a person for sure. Doesn't matter if you were a fan of her or not beforehand, but like, and I say, as a huge fan, although certainly not, you know, someone who was like deep into Britney, but even as casual a fan as I've been over the years, this gave me a lot of perspective on her, and I really appreciate that she put her pain into words, and she's allowed us to experience some of what she's gone through, the good stuff and the bad stuff equally. And that's it. Cheers, guys. Um, I'll be doing some more stuff down the line for all the other projects. So keep an eye out for that on the socials, and just be sure to check out my other videos. Thanks, guys. Cheers. Bye.